Hello, everyone, and welcome into today's webinar, Adapting to Change with Confidence, presented by the Director of Business Solutions here at Watermark Learning, Dr. Susan Heidorn. My name is Mariela Salinas, and I will be assisting in moderating today's session. We are in Zoom for today's webinar, and we will be emailing you a copy of this recording after the session. We do encourage participation throughout the session, so please use the chat or our Q&A option for our short Q&A after the presentation. Educate 360 is so excited to present this webinar today. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to you, Dr. Heidorn.
Thank you so much, Mariella, and welcome everyone. Happy Thursday to wherever you're at. It seems like this week has just flown by. And speaking of which, we are talking about adapting to change with confidence because changes are always coming around us. So the focus of today's session is going to talk about articulating the need for resiliency. And I think in this crazy world, crazy time, we need to be even more resilient. Also to be able to understand the transition process that we go through in change, that everyone goes through. We're certainly going to learn about that. That kind of helps us set the pace and realizing that it's more of a constant journey and a constant need for resiliency these days, and some activities that we can do to really build our resiliency and sustain that resiliency. And so that's really what our focus is today. And I think at this time, at least I'll speak for myself, life seems crazy. And I don't know about your life, but it is never ending surprises that land on your plate. And so this actually came from the military, but I do love it because I think it kind of explains kind of where we're at. And I'm really interested in what you think. Is today's volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And it's so we're in a VUCA environment, just in case you need another acronym for your long list of acronyms in your life, but it can easily overwhelm us. Does anybody feel that way? Is it just me? I mean, it just seems like it's so fast and so crazy. Some of you raise your hand. So just put it in the chat. I'm just curious, what's coming at you? I mean, because it could be family, it could be work, it could be all kinds of things. So, just the economy shifts and everything. It's just, a crazy time. So what's really impacting you? I'm just kind of curious of what you're seeing. Reorg structures, downsizing, upsizing, right sizing, whatever the term is of the day. Work, major changes at work. Yep, for sure. Let's see. I'm just looking at low funding at work, reorg. Yes, yes. And that just makes us all kind of a little bit anxious, doesn't it? Competing priorities, restructuring work, a lot of safety in the community. Oh, that is so true. So true. I am from Minnesota, so it's been a crazy time here. Work status, safety in the community, all jobs seem to be 1.5 jobs. Doesn't that? Oh, for sure. All jobs. Yeah, funding uncertainty, everything. I know, doesn't it? It's just overwhelming. Reorg, department managers, new managers, or new reorgs are huge because, like, now who do I report to? How am I going to deal with that? How do they want to be worked with? I know I've been at Educate 360 now, I think for 6 years. Mariella could probably tell me if I'm right or not. And I'm on my fourth boss. So and everyone was uniquely different. And how do I get along with this person, or how do I communicate with that person? And that is so true. Leadership onboarding, yeah. Not enough staff. Yeah, God, it just seems like we're asked to do more and more and more. And I thought, 10 years ago we were talking about, oh my gosh, everybody is getting, all organizations are getting lean and we got to do a lot more with less. And it seems like it's even getting crazier now. And I am recovering from a cold, so my voice is kind of, weird. So I'll just let you know that if I kind of listening to myself and I'm going, it's kind of coming and going. So let's see. So we live in a VUCA world and we're in constant state of change. So, a lot of you, thank you so very much for putting it in the chat. Work restructures, so reorgs, mergers, acquisitions, spinning off certain branches of the company, new process, product, services that are coming around. Up technology, man, that doesn't stop, does it? We're upgrading technology. Now we've got all that digital transformation. We have AI coming around the pike, not coming around the pike, it is here. I actually use it quite a bit these days, which is kind of helpful, but I don't always, sometimes I'm going, nah, you're not correct. So I'll have little conversations with my little chat GPT. Reorgs, new methodologies, changing culture. And the interesting thing is it's not only our work environment that's changing, it's our culture and our country that's changing. It's the things that are happening around us that can really stress us out. And so how do we stay resilient? And maybe family changes. We've had a lot of big family changes in our world or my world in the last year. And it's like, wow, how do you balance that without going crazy? So we're going to give you a few tips that I hope will certainly help. So, the interesting thing is we look at changes. And sometimes we can say, well, some people don't like change and other people, adapt easy to change. It really, and I've consulted in this and worked with this for over 30 years, but I find it really depends on what the change is. It depends on if we elect the change or have buy-in to that change rather than the change being hoisted on us. And what a lot of organizations don't realize is, if we look at organizational impacts, that when you make a change to a process or a product or a service or a reorg or anything else, that impacts us personally. And that's where we have to be resilient because it changes maybe how we do our work. I could do it in my sleep. Now I gotta, now I gotta think about it, or the philosophy towards work. Are your managers, directors, CEOs, the C club, are they just, pushing and pushing and pushing? How do we want to be? How do we want to be? What do we care about? What are our values? Our relationships with others? How are we going to work together? How we manage time? So that impacts kind of who we are. So it's kind of hard to separate when we're impacted by a change. How is that going to impact me personally? I get how it's going to impact the organization, or maybe I'm not sure and I want to know why. But how does it? There's a lot of impacts. It impacts the organization, it impacts the department, it impacts us as individuals. And so how do we deal with that? So here is one of my favorite tools, and I do use this both in consulting and teaching because it was an eye-opener for me way back when I was first understanding that people weren't as excited about that new technology and processes that I was bringing them. Because I'd say, oh, we got to do something different. That's got to be easier, and so then I started working on projects. Of course, projects introduce change. And I was curious, like I was so excited about it. And of course, I had time to, understand the change before putting it out to the masses. And not everybody was so excited. And I'm going, And the interesting thing, I was a psychology major, so it's like this should not have been something that I had to think about. But I was in the midst of work and, people aren't so excited. And then I came across this and I'm going, this just helped. And I use it all with my clients when I'm helping them through change. So this is actually Virginia Satir's model. Virginia Satir was a therapist and she helped people through grief. And there was a person that was sitting in her class one time, George Davis, who actually had an IT company, and he goes, "Oh my gosh, that's the same thing that people go through when you get a new process in the organization or you get new technology in the organization." And so it really is true. The interesting thing too is because I'm going to go through it, is that it's not, it looks really like step, 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 very sequential. It goes back and forth, you can slide back, but it also impacts productivity. And as you look at time, so a lot of time we're trying to narrow the time that we and other people go through the process, and then in order to get productivity higher. And so first of all, we have the status quo, current routine. Yeah, we know our stuff, whether that's having your old boss or old processes or whatever. It's just, what's happening. And then a change event. Maybe you got a new process, maybe you got a new reorg, maybe you just purchased another company, something happened. So that's going to be the change event. Okay. And at first, and this is interesting, at first we all have resistance, all of us. Now, some of that resistance might just say, whoa, 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 hey, why are we doing this? Ah, I see. Okay, okay, got it. And so sometimes it's just answering the why for people and then they can move on. Other times, people stick in resistance for a little while, like, okay, how's it going to impact me? It might be a great idea for the company, but what about me? And some organizations, which oftentimes I'm brought in, get stuck in this. They get stuck I've worked with clients that, they've been stuck in resistance for a year and a half, and they haven't gotten anywhere. And we can't afford that, as you know, these days, for ourselves or for our organization. And at some point after resistance, getting to understanding what's going on, we can say, okay, I realize I have to move on. I can't keep living in the past. I have to move forward. But then there's that chaos. And when I was in between jobs, I was working with a group of people who help people through transition and being able to update their resumes and stuff. So all that employee support stuff. And he was actually a psychologist, and he said, there's a lot of growth in chaos. And I'm going, yeah, but it doesn't feel comfortable. But it does allow you to figure out, sometimes we find our strengths in chaos, but right now it seems like all the time we're in chaos. But sometimes you feel really good, sometimes you don't, sometimes you slip back into resistance and then you go back again. But at some point you get insight and vision, and then, you practice the new thing. And then there's, that new status quo, which won't probably last very long because the next thing will come along. And oftentimes the interesting thing is, and I'm speaking to the choir here, there's more change than just one coming at us. It would be really nice if it was one at a time. You probably wouldn't be here. But that's not. It's, there's a lot of things different coming. And so some you might be going, through, and others like you might still be in resistance, and they're kind of like you're trying to manage the whole thing. Um, yes, yes, Stella, feeling losing control of what you can't control. Yeah, yeah, it's crazy these days. So just understanding though, this might be 5 minutes, this might be 5 seconds, this might be, a year. Hopefully not, because we don't have that much time anymore. But how do we help get through there? And that's what we're going to really be talking about today. So we're going to talk about resiliency. How do we get through this? How do we, with ourselves intact, and not sitting under the desk crying? which one person did what that I was working with, because it got to be too much. But resiliency is the ability to bounce back from life's difficulties, and I love that, the bouncing back, because that just kind of evokes some, a mindset of like, okay, how do we get out of that gunk and out of the chaos, and how do we, manage ourselves, and what can we do to make ourselves more resilient so this stuff isn't so exhausting and so emotional. So it's about adapting to our experiences. And I'm talking about mental, because that's part of it. It's in part emotional, right? And part of behavior, and being able to be flexible and adjustable. Yes. And so pray and meditate is very good as well. If some things are going to work for some people, not others. So being resilient, how do we make ourselves resilient with all this change coming past us? So we learn to become, I like this quote, we learn to become resilient. We learn how to embrace the beautiful broad spectrum of human experience. And so accepting our emotions, but not letting them overwhelm us. What resiliency is not, and I want to point this out, it's not to, once you learn some techniques, and a lot of you, I bet, have techniques as well, ensuring that you're not going to experience any emotional distress. You're going to be able to deal with it better, but we are still emotional people. It comes with the human package, right? We can't separate our emotions from ourselves. They come with us, but we can manage them a little bit better. It's also not just for the like, oh, you are so resilient. I've heard that before. Oh, yeah. Well, it's easy for you to say. You've probably heard those. Anyone can learn to be more resilient, and it just depends on kind of where you're on the cycle. And we can all learn to be more resilient. It also doesn't mean that you reach the goal at all costs. Damn the torpedoes. It's really knowing when to persevere and when to quit. When to say, you know what, there's nothing I can do about this. I've put my 2 cents in. I just have to be able to deal with it. Or going alone. It's about reaching out. We should not have to do this alone. This is about community. And I think that's more important nowadays than ever is community, to help each other with all the stuff that's coming at us. And that means that we have to be more vulnerable. And I know I grew up in Minnesota, and we have that Minnesota culture. I don't know if it's from we have originally Minnesota was settled by Germans and Scandinavians, so I don't know if that was some of their culture or not. I'm sure they came in forth, but it's kind of like going going it alone. My grandmother would always say, you made your bed, lie in it. Too bad, too sad. so it's kind of that the old adage, suck it up, buttercup, which my friend would say. It's just like, but how can we help each other? We should be able to help each other and ask for help and lean on help and help others, so that it's more of a community thing and you don't feel like you're so alone. It's like, oh my gosh. So there are some different types of resilience. There's psychological resilience. That's our ability to motivate ourselves over something difficult. Maybe you're going you're working full time. That's what I did. Working full time, have kids, and go to school. Get a degree. Or you're going to run a marathon, and you're just gonna make it work. So it's something that's psychological. You're just setting yourself up to get past. Emotional resistance is being able to stay calm under pressure. Maybe it's a challenging customer that's angry with you, or a vendor that's angry, or your kids are, whatever it is. How do you get that zen moment? It's like, okay, I don't have to reply in an emotional state. So that's about emotional resistance. Social resistance is what I was just talking about, reaching out, saying, hey, together we can do this. Together we can support each other. Together we can make a difference. And not making sure that, people feel kind of alone because sometimes it's hard to admit that, it's your life is getting overwhelmed. And sometimes you just need to talk through it and have other people listen and support and vice versa. And then physical, according come physical challenges. Meeting, maybe you're running a marathon and you want to beat your time. Or, in sports, we certainly can see this a lot, but, or you came through a health disaster, now you're getting healthier again. What does that look like? So it's all kinds of resilience. So when I'm talking about resilience, we often talk about maybe psychological or emotional, but it's the whole piece of resilience. So here are the 8 ways we're going to talk about it. And so we're going to go through each one, so I'm not going to go through it here, but this is kind of if you want to take a picture of this, you will get the slides and the recording, but it's kind of helpful to, say, oh yeah, this is what I need to be able to do to get through this thing, and even though I teach this stuff, the interesting thing is I sometimes have to remind myself as I'm getting overloaded. It's like, okay, step back. How are you going to be resilient around this? And so it's kind of nice. I have it on my monitor to remind myself, because sometimes I get wrapped up in the moment, as you would say. I'm very passionate, as my boss would say. And I need to say, okay, Susan, you need to be more resilient. So the first thing is oftentimes we need to learn the why of the change. What is this? It's like, whoa, wait, stop the presses. One of my bosses, one of the first things, I think she was my third boss, and she said, what do I need to know about you? And I said, I have to know the why. Just tell me the why before you ask me to do something and change something. And she goes, yeah, I understand that. I need the why too. It's just like, give me the why. Why are we doing this? How is that going to help the organization? How is it going to help the department? How is it, what does that future look like? And it's a nice quote here. He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. Sometimes we just need to know the why. It's like, where did this come from? Whose idea was that, and just kind of, but being able to figure it out. It's like, okay, what is it? What does it mean to me then? What does it mean to our department? What changes do we have to have if this is the way we go? And sometimes having a bigger understanding, because there'll be changes thrown at me and I'm going, wait a minute here, this doesn't even make sense. Why are we doing this? And then I understand the why and the bigger context. And it's not just about me or my department. It's like, okay, now I get it. That certainly helps. And it helps me be more acceptable of the change. Sometimes it's a mindset. The other thing we can do is to mitigate your stress. And a lot of you had started mentioning that in the chat. And being able to determine, if you're stressed. So what are the signs? What are the signs that you're stressed? Is your heart beating faster? Are you catching your breath? Are you developing sweaty hands? Oh, crying? Yeah, maybe being more emotional. And then thinking about, oh, unable to sleep. Boy, is that for sure. And so it was, identifying what triggered that event. Okay, it's like, okay, Susan, walk it back. What stressed you out? Because sometimes it wasn't even intentional. Somebody said something and I took it wrong. And it's like, okay, Maybe they didn't mean that. Maybe they were just being really, really um, quick to reply, and they didn't put any niceties in there or whatever, you know. And just understanding your stress and your triggers. You know, one of my triggers is being told what to do. You can ask me, and like 150% of the time, I'll be there. I'll be there with, bells on. But if you tell me what to do, I don't know where that came from. But then I get my hackles up. And I have to talk back to myself. Okay, they didn't mean that, Susan. Just reduce your stress. Tired, grumpy, snappy, yeah. So it's just kind of figuring out, okay, what were the triggers? What's going on? How do I need to figure out? Do I need deep breathing? Do I need to walk around the block? Do I need to take myself out of the situation? Figuring out what works for you. Sometimes it's just, getting away. Go take lunch, go take a break, go talk to play with your dog, whatever it is. What is going to de-stress you? And then change your perspective. And this is easier said than done. But what if you reframe your thoughts? Instead of positive mindset, is saying, okay, this is, oh gosh, I don't want to go through this. What are those positive things? And I use this a lot with my clients, and it's based on appreciative inquiry, if you've heard of that. So appreciative inquiry is looking at the positives versus the negatives. And it was really based on a consultant, an OD consultant. And he was talking to a group of people, and he was saying, okay, well, what needs to change? What are you having a hard time with? And what don't you like about it? And they just went down into the rabbit hole, in the abyss. And he said, I couldn't even get him out of there, because one person would say this and another person, pretty soon digging deeper, 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 deeper into the void. And he said, this isn't working. Asking them, what's wrong, what do we need to fix, is just looking backwards. What if we put a positive mindset in it and saying, okay, what is going well? And then what would even be better? So you're grounded into what's going okay for you in your life. What could make it better? There's always something positive. And a lot of times when I work through people with change, I said, okay, what are the 3 positive things you can think about on this change? And they go, well, nothing. I don't like any of it. It's like, well, I'm going to make you happy, And then once they do that, what happens is the mind shifts. It's like all of a sudden, it's like begrudgingly, okay, fine, well, perhaps this will be better, you know, or this will be, but what you have, you switched your mindset. Instead of just saying everything's awful, it's like, well, maybe there's a couple things that are at least positive. And so you change your perspective, because there's positives in everything that there is. And so we just, maybe if nothing else, it's a learning experience. Okay. And that would employ also a growth mindset rather than fix that. Oh, I can't be resilient would be an example of a fixed mindset. But if you apply growth mindset saying, hey, I can learn this, I can do this, I can learn this new software. I can. And so, or new process or whatever it is. And implying a growth mindset instead of a fix, because a fix will just say, no, I can't do it. That's all the better I can do. And challenge ourselves going, well, maybe I can learn something new. I have to tell you a funny little story about growth mindset. I was on a plane with a colleague of mine. We were doing a really big change project and helping people through change in another state. So we were on our way there, and he was telling me about his mother, and his mother at that time was probably 70 something. And he says, yeah, she wasn't your typical mother. You'd come home, and you wouldn't have, food or anything on the supper because she'd go, oh, I have never acted. I'm trying out for the new play in the at the local theater, or oh, I haven't quilted before. I'm going to learn how to quilt. And then one day she said, hey, I just bought a computer. This is a number years ago, probably about 20 years ago. I just bought a computer. Now teach me how to use this. This should be cool. She was always learning new things. And it's just like, oh my gosh, I love that. The thought of, okay, I can learn something new. It's not the end, it's just the beginning. There's always something to learn. So that is, I always have a picture in my mind about growth mindset. She hadn't done it, so let's do it. Self-control, embracing change agency. Now, I am, because some of you said this, loss of control. Big control person here. Big, big, sometimes a control freak. So a lot of times I find that sometimes it's like, gosh, I don't have a sense of control, and I do not have any control. I can't control that department. I can't basically control is is a figment of our imagination because the only thing we control is ourselves. We can't control anyone else. We can influence them or do other things, but generally it's just we can control ourselves. But what that allowed me to do is say, okay, I don't have control over that, but I have some other things that I can control. I control what I'm feeling. I control what I'm doing. I can control how I do something and how I present it. So, what are the things that are in my control? Because I get really crazy if I don't feel like I'm in control anymore and things are being done to me. And I stop and think, it's like, okay, what is in your control? And I still offer my 2 cents, or I still say, well, I think we could change this, but I have to realize what is in my control and what is worth. As a friend of mine always said, is this the ditch I'm dying in? And I thought, wow, that's an interesting saying, but okay. But in the sense of, do I really need to get all crazy because I don't have control? Maybe I don't need control. Somebody else needs control. I just can control me. I control my emotions. I can control myself. I can't control anybody else. And if I feel like I've done the best I can to what's going on, that doesn't mean I don't have a say. I don't put my 2 cents in. I'd certainly always do that. I can't help it. It's with me. But what can I control? And that makes me feel better. It's like, I can deal with that. That's good. Connecting with others. Oh, there's a person said, can you control your feelings? I feel like you cannot, but you can acknowledge and explore them. Um, It depends, I guess, on how we define control. I'm just going back there a little bit. Because that's really, I think we can't control the triggers, but we can control how we respond to the triggers. So like I said, I don't like being told what to do. It kind of drives me crazy. But I know that about myself. So somebody came up and said, Susan, you have to do this. I can rationalize now saying, okay, I know that's a trigger for me and I'm not going to go there because, it's not worth it. And, you know, I'm just going to say they're asking me, they're not telling me. So you can kind of play sometimes a little, I play mind games with me a little. Whoops. Sorry about that. Um, I was trying to advance the webinar chat. So just being able to know your triggers is going to help you realize, okay, and then say, okay, how do I really want to respond? I mean, you still have some of those emotions inside, but it's more, I think, when I think of control, because we cannot have not emotions. That's not fathomable. We can't do that. We're always going to have emotions. It comes with us. What we do with those emotions, how we visibly, put those emotions out is certainly up to us. So we still have emotions, can't not have emotions, but we can figure out how do we want to respond to these outwardly. So connecting with others, reach out. I think there's that old adage, reach out and touch someone. um, Respectfully. Connecting with others is just, it does help. Sometimes people just, you need to listen to them, get out a helping hand. People don't have to be by themselves. We're stronger. We are stronger together than we are separate. And when we're all going through so much, and oftentimes, somebody at work is just feeling like inundated, you don't know what else is going on in their lives, you know. Um, I had this one person, I was actually talking about this class, building resiliency, and we're just talking about all the emotions. And of course, it was a 1 day class, so we could talk and discuss more. But she came up to me and she goes, I just want you to know I love the class. I'm really quiet because I've had two deaths in my family within 2 weeks. One was my sister and one was my father. And it's just like, oh my gosh. I mean, here she was dealing with lots of pain, and we talked a little bit, but it's, you know, everybody's kind of in different spots and everybody has something going on. How do we support each other? How do we connect each other? Because that's how we become more resilient. Together, we are more resilient than we are by ourselves. And then that doesn't, reaching out to getting help doesn't mean that, we're incapable of doing it ourselves. We're just much stronger with each other. And sometimes we just need somebody to listen to. And then managing our emotions, like I said, can't stop. We have them, but we can regulate them. We don't have to go off the deep end. I am still working on that. I'm not going to say any of this is easy, folks. I'm still, still work in progress. I'm still going up to Maslow's hierarchy of needs and self-actualization, getting better. So we can't stop, like I had mentioned before, but we can control them and regulate them. If, like I said, if you know your triggers, how do I want to respond with that trigger, and making sure that we're, solidly grounded and have support. The other thing is self-care. And I don't know about you, but I tend to forget about myself, usually thinking about other, people. It's like, okay, how do I help my husband when I had kids at home and even now that they're adults and my grandkids. So sometimes leave, we take care of everybody ourselves, but we take care of everybody else, but we don't take care of ourselves, you know. And unless we're taking care of ourselves and we are healthy and we are getting enough sleep and we're getting enough food and we're getting enough time just to take a Zen moment like they have on TV these days. uh, are we taking care of ourselves? Because if we don't, it's going to be harder to be resilient, just kind of figuring out what do we do to support ourselves? Because if we support ourselves and we ensure we have self-care, we can help others, so get enough sleep, stay hydrated. I have my water right beside me. Stay active, have some fun. Fun, fun, fun. Get outdoors. Now, I know in Minnesota it's a little harder because this week has been nice, but two weeks earlier it's been below zero, and I don't care to go out when it's that cold and it's a negative, and the wind's blowing and it's just like, I'm not going to go out. I'm going to stay warm and stay here. Thank you very much. So but realizing that, once it's nice out, go for a walk or get outside or do whatever self-care that you need to take for yourselves, making sure that you have the stamina to support self-care. And then we need to celebrate progress. Okay. So thinking about this, it's just like anything else, changing a habit. Okay. And so generally, I used to always think because, it was not, New Year's not too long ago, and we all, there's so many times where we do a New Year's resolution. I don't know how many of you done New Year's resolutions. I gave up because when the time is right, I'm going to make that change. Um, and I always used to think or had heard that it takes about 30 days to change a habit. And then I did more research on it because that's like, I'm really good for about 30 days, but after that, I slide off, you know, the wagon. Same thing when, I think when people go to join the gyms, they start really good, but in January and by February, half of them are not there anymore. So I said, God, it's got to be taking a lot longer to change a habit. And then I read more like, 3 months or more to change a habit. Depends on what the habit is, if it's just an adjustment or a key thing that you want to do. But one of the things is a couple ideas is just take this in little chunks, you know, kind of maybe just say, okay, I'm going to celebrate 3 things today that I moved to my resilience. You don't have to move a mountain. Just what are some little things, and how are you going to celebrate progress? Because sometimes, like, if you try and change your whole world, and it depends on some people are really good at just stopping. Stop smoking and not smoke anymore. And some people just kind of gradually need a little bit of help going through it. Depends on how you best change. Is it all or nothing, or is it just little pieces? I find little pieces are less disturbing to me because if I try and change everything, it usually goes under because it's too much. So just doing little things, this month I'm going to do this month I'm going to do this, or week or whatever, this day. And then celebrate progress because you're not going to be resilient overnight. Think about the things that, of the pieces that I had laid out, um, is being able to, you know, keep healthy, build your resilience, get help from others, all of those, the 8 components that we just talked about, maybe draw a map and saying, okay, which one do I want to focus on now? And then feel good and comfortable at that. And then what do I need to do next? And so thinking about not only celebrating, but how to sustain, because I said sustaining is the hard part. Usually starting something, pretty good, but how do we sustain it? How do we finish it? So think about what barriers might prevent your resilience. So I'm going to ask you to put in the chat, think about what are those barriers? What barriers do you have that's going to prevent you from being more resilient? And sometimes the barriers are ourselves or our own thinking. So if some of you are still feeling stuck, yeah, that is a good barrier. Just some others. Laziness. I love it. Daily responsibility. Yeah, the noise. Yeah, the things that are coming at us. We got all this stuff, and then we forget again ourselves. You are the most important, and you can't do work. You can't be with your family. You can't, be beneficial to those around you unless you take care of yourselves and are resilient. And then you can help others be resilient. It's kind of like when you go to you're on the plane and they give you this little spiel about what to do, and if the air mask comes down and doesn't inflate, it's still okay. You can still breathe, but put yours on first before you help others. So this is kind of like resiliency. Do it for yourself first, and then you can help others. Plus, you're a great role model at that time, too. Think about who can you leverage to help stay in your resiliency? Yeah. Yeah, it's really hard to disconnect when your team is lean. It is. It is. That is true. But still maybe saying, hey, I'm going to carve out 5 minutes today and I'm just going to take a breather. Because what happens if you're more resilient, you can get more work done faster. Remember that productivity line that I said as we go through? You can get your productivity will go up as we get move through that change curve. What can you do differently to increase your chances of success? Maybe get a couple people at your office or somebody at your family to support you, or just make a map, or make this, like I said, this day I'm going to do this, and this week I'm going to do this. Just thinking about how you can reinforce your new behaviors too. And then reinforce them to make sure it's good. The interesting thing is, when you go on a diet, it's like, oh, I'm going to give myself and celebrate. I'm going to eat that chocolate cake because I haven't had any for a month. Maybe that's not such a good idea. But a taste or two wouldn't be bad. I mean, I don't feel like we have to do all or nothing. But within, you know, the realms of whatever you're trying to do. So, yeah, accountability partner. I love that. Don, that's a great idea. Um, Having an accountability partner keeps you on track. And that does help, because then you're just like, okay, well, I can't just say, oh, I don't have time, or I'm not going to do that, or whatever. It's just like, how can I have an accountability partner? I love that idea. That is perfect. Yeah, and streamline your processes, automate them, delegate. Yes, I love the delegate. Tamika, that's great. Delegate even at home. You don't have to go do work and then do everything at home. I make my husband. I didn't make him. We agreed when he retired. I'm still working. Um, that he gets to, if he's going to retire, he had to do the cooking. So, so we do kind of share. I think he does most of it, but supposedly I'm going to pretend that we share work responsibilities around the house. Um, so just kind of thinking about, what can you do to figure out how to make things easier, you know? And remember, the other thing is we can't do it all. Now, I'm speaking from being a workaholic and thinking I have to do it all and I have to save the world. And I had to realize, because it was destroying me, that I can't save the world. I'll do my little piece, but I can't save the world. And I can't do everything, and I have to be okay with that. And if any of you are workaholics, yeah, self-care. Any of you are workaholics, um, and thinking you have to do everything and you have to do everything perfect, perfectionist here too. Um, and that's what I'm working on. The self-care, because 3 o'clock in the morning, it wasn't, and it's not about me. I'm just giving you some examples of, things to think about. What can you do to become more resilient? And so I was sharing some of the things that I'm doing to be more resilient. And like I say, I teach this class, so you'd think I could do it all. But we're just, always it's a progress. The human condition. So enough about this, because I could probably go on forever and you all have other work to do. So any questions? And if you're interested in more about this, we do have some classes there that are just up there, and you will receive the slides and the recording. So what can I answer for you? And
Abs-
hopefully you've all enjoyed this. So I hopefully didn't get too much amok.
Not at all. I will go ahead and give our audience a extra minute to throw in any questions, any feedback. We also got a lot of amazing feedback in here, so thank you all so much for your engagement throughout it. I went ahead and dropped in a couple of links here about change management and how amazing it is to really be resilient. We had a question come in, tips toward getting out feeling stuck. Oh, good question.
I think that's where because it's easy. It's so easy to get overwhelmed, isn't it? It's like, oh my God, I don't know where to start. Just start with one thing. And then, when you're successful at that builds the momentum, and then do one other thing, because it's kind of like a, project, it's like, how do I eat this whole elephant? I can't. So you take it one thing at a time, and just figuring out what can you do to get unstuck? Maybe you need support, maybe call a friend, or maybe you can just put a plan together, say I'm going to just do one thing at a time, and then I get successful at that. Then you can leverage that success to the next thing. Um, and it's just eliminating everything else from your mind and just taking what's in front of you. At least that's what's helped me, because it's like, oh, there's lots of stuff going, all noise right here. Okay, I'm going to ignore that noise. I'm going to work on this right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, it can get really overwhelming sometimes. So absolutely.
Yes, post-it note parking lot. I love it. I love it. Um, so I wish you all the best. And yeah, 5-second rule by Mel Robbins. Yes.
Love Mel Robbins.
Yeah.
So awesome.
Great
Such
way
a
to get unstuck. Love it. Thank you so much for putting great suggestions in the chat. Love it. So,
Absolutely, everyone. And I saw we got a couple questions during about the recording. You'll absolutely get a recording in your email after the session, so be on the lookout for that. But other than that, thank you so much, Dr. Heidorn.
well, thank you, and wonderful rest of your week, and wishing you all the best on building your resiliency.
Absolutely. Thanks again for joining us, everyone. We really appreciate your attendance and your engagement. So, like Dr. Heidorn said, have a fantastic rest of your week, and hopefully we'll see you all very soon. Bye for now.